Yeah, we back. We back. Now, I don't know why nobody has spoken about this or no major media news outlet has reported on this, but hey, I might as well do it since nobody else gonna do it. Now, we have two major developments coming out of the AES, right? Now, take a look up on the screen. This is an article from Burkina 24 that I translated from French, the local Burkina Faso media. It says this: soon, new school textbooks in line with the socio-cultural realities of Burkina Faso. Now, wow, I don't think we understand how much of a game changer this is. I always say, I've always been of the opinion that a large source of a lot of our problems lies in the type of education that we received as children, right? The reason why we're so backwards as a people really can be traced back to the education we received in our early childhood years. When you take the Jewish community, for example, a lot of people always say, oh, the Jewish community, the camaraderie they have with each other, the unity they have amongst each other, how they move as a unit. That's not an accident. That's a deliberate action taken to educate and indoctrinate their children along certain cultural lines. So when they grow up, they've been instilled with a sense of pride, with a sense of unity, with a sense of ancestral understanding, with a sense of duty and obligation to their people. That's not an accident, bro. It's not an accident. It's a deliberate action. And when it comes to grown men and women, you can't fix them. They're already set in their ways. But when it comes to children, they have a clean slate and you can indoctrinate them in any direction. Now let's continue. Take a look up on the screen. The National Center for Textbooks and School Supplies has undertaken to publish 10 new titles of school textbooks within their educational guides, including 5 from post-primary for the 6th grade and 5 from secondary for the 2nd class. A workshop to validate the 10 documents is underway from July 8th to July 12th for 2024. The school textbook plays a remarkably strategic role in the training of children, the citizens of tomorrow. However, in Burkina Faso, most school textbooks are obsolete and unadapted to the socio-cultural realities. This obsolescence constitutes a break on the demand and use of these textbooks by students because they no longer fully meet the educational and didactic requirements of the moment. In addition, the majority of textbooks in use are not accompanied by their teaching guides, which constitutes a handicap for their optimal use by teachers. Most of the textbooks used in Burkina Faso are published by foreigners and by foreign editions. This deficiency will now be corrected, and the students will have textbooks designed by Burkina Faso for Burkina Faso, manuals consistent with the sociocultural realities of Burkina Faso. Now, wow, this can apply to all black nations. I don't think this is something exclusive to Burkina Faso. Everywhere you go, anywhere in the world, in any black nation, if you look at the school curriculum, I guarantee it's heavily influenced by foreigners if it's not directly published and written by foreigners altogether. I know, for example, when you take my country, when you look at Haiti and you look at our school curriculum, it's just straight garbage, straight garbage. They talk about how Dessalines was a bloodthirsty savage, a murderer. They talk about how Christophe was a dictator, and they talk about how the mulattoes were the real revolutionaries. Like the narrative is just so distorted. They talk about how the French generals were benevolent and generous, and it's crazy. But that's a result of us signing an agreement, a Concordat agreement with the Vatican back in the 1850s. And within that agreement, it allowed the Catholic Church to have pretty much a monopoly over the education of the babies. And within that curriculum, you get these distorted narratives of how the French were generous and benevolent, and how our forefathers like Dessalines and Christophe were bloodthirsty dictators, and how the American invasion and occupation was actually a good thing because they brought civilization and they brought railroads and things like that. But in reality, they were slaughtering and mass murdering our people. But listen, the narrative is so distorted in the curriculum. And I noticed that from what I've heard and gathered, that this is something that is common in all black nations, right? Like, for example, if you go to Nigeria, I'm pretty sure it's a similar type of thing, right? They downplaying our ancestors, they throwing dirt on the name of our ancestors, and they glorifying the Europeans, they glorifying the British, they glorifying, Sir Charles McCarthy, they glorifying the British generals, they glorifying the King of England, etc., etc. I think it's a common thing in all black nations. The curriculum is outdated, the narratives are distorted, and everything is backwards. And because of that, you get a backwards people. You get a people who are full of self-hate. You get a people who don't really operate in their own self-interest. You get a people who are constantly selling each other out because from birth they were given a backwards curriculum, an upside down curriculum from where they don't know how to orient themselves when they go out into the world. Right? So that's why you have all these sellout leaders across the continent. We wonder why we have so many sellout leaders. It's not really a mistake. It's not really a mistake. It's a reason why when I talk about the Elysee boys, right? Man, they go to the Elysee Palace in France and they shaking hands with Macron and they smiling, they looking so happy, shaking the white man's hand. It's because ever since they were young children, they were taught to glorify the European. They were taught to glorify the other side and downplay themselves and denigrate themselves and not show respect for their forefathers. It really starts from a young age, man. When we talk about the Elysee boys started from a very young age, man. You know, the Elysee boys, that was lifelong training to become an Elysee boy. It didn't happen overnight. It started at the age of 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old in the classroom. In fact, just earlier today, I seen a tweet from the new Prime Minister of Haiti, right? He was actually sending his well wishes to France, to the people of France, because today apparently is Bastille Day. Apparently today on July 14th, that was when the French stormed the Bastille back in 1789. And this black Haitian head of state decided to, on a public platform, send his well wishes to France on Bastille Day. Take a look up on the screen. Prime Minister of Haiti, Gary Conille, he said this: July 14, 1789, the storming of the Bastille in France. Beyond the festive celebration, this date recalls the fight of the French people for freedom, equality, and fraternity. On behalf of the government and in my personal name, I renew all the solidarity of the Haitian people to the French people who are still fighting to achieve their ideals. Now, why would a Haitian man, unless he was horribly miseducated as a child, show any solidarity, show any camaraderie with the white man from France? Think about it. Unless he was horribly miseducated as a child and he has no orientation on the history and his identity as a man, why would he ever do this? Why would it ever make sense to do this? This is a product of miseducation. He is a product of that education sponsored by the Vatican. Now, take a look up on the screen. This person said, in 1789, your ancestors were in the chains of slavery at the hands of these same people you are flattering. Now, see, this is a black man. This is a black man who is properly oriented on his identity and his history as a black man from Haiti, right? This is a black man who's in tune with his ancestors, who has broken the chains of colonization in his mind. But unfortunately, we have heads of state who have not yet broken the chains. And of course, it's no surprise they've been chosen by the international community to be our leaders. But like I always say, man, it starts from young. It starts with the babies, bro. It starts with the babies. We can indoctrinate the babies on any ideology, go in any direction. We can raise them up to be a generation of patriots, nationalists, ready to die for the homeland, bro. And if you ask me, I believe us as black people, as African descended people, we have more of a glorious history than these other folks. For example, you take the United States, they're very patriotic, right? Because they raise their children to be from a very young age, waking up every single morning, hand over your chest, singing the national anthem. From a very young age, they're teaching you about George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, the founding fathers, etc., etc. Even though these men were pedophiles, even though these men didn't even take showers on a regular basis, they still venerate and glorify these men. They indoctrinate the minds of their children to worship these men and honor these men. That's why even though they have an embarrassing and shameful history, their people are very patriotic. The white man in France, he's very patriotic. Even though he has a bloody and an embarrassing and shameful history, they still indoctrinate their children to worship their ancestors, honor Napoleon Bonaparte, give honor and respect to Charles de Gaulle, to General Rochambeau, etc., etc. And why do you think they're so passionate about maintaining their interests in Africa? Because they indoctrinate their children along those lines. And this is off topic too, but why do you think our women be out here dating and mixing and mingling with the enemies of our ancestors? It's not because they have anything in common. It's not because they have admiration for their culture. It's because our women themselves are badly miseducated. A large amount of our problems and a large amount of our incomprehensible behavior can be traced back to our poor miseducation. Like, for example, a couple weeks ago, I did a video on the president of Benin who had met with a controversial French general. And in that video, I said, how could you allow a French general to come to your country when 100 years ago, the French invaded your country and was killing all the women and children? Like, how could you shake the hand of a Frenchman in front of the cameras? But that's because even the president of Benin himself is poorly miseducated, just like the prime minister of Haiti, and just like the common black man and woman walking down the street every single day. A lot of our people are walking around with their heads on backwards, man, with their heads on backwards. And it started from when they were a child. But yeah, man, in summary, I think this is an excellent initiative, right? It's not something that's going to show immediate results, in a single day. It's going to be something over time, you notice, right? As you continue to pump out a new generation, then you see the results that you're going to get, in 10 years, 15 years, 25 years. That's when you're going to see the results. But this right here, this is true decolonization. Decarbonization starts in the mind, bro. Decarbonization starts in the mind. Now, let's get into the next subject. Take a look up on the screen. Surprisingly, I was not expecting the Western media to cover this. This actually was reported a couple months back, but I'm actually late on reporting it, right? Now, the French media actually reported on this. This is actually coming from RFI.com, which is a state-owned media publication in France. So I was not expecting them to actually report on this news. Nobody else reported on it though. CNN didn't cover this. Reuters didn't cover this. The British Broadcasting Company didn't cover it. Al Jazeera didn't cover it. Just like they did not cover this, the Burkina Faso school story. They didn't cover that either, right? They don't cover. They don't cover. Like, I've noticed, like, certain stories, they just don't even cover it. Like, for example, Ibrahim Traore's speeches in the past week. He dropped 2 major speeches, groundbreaking speeches. Nobody's talking about what he said. He was talking about how Western nations are sabotaging the delivery of weapons to Burkina Faso. He was talking about how they don't want to sell weapons to Burkina Faso. He was talking about how they're going to withdraw operating license from the mineral resources. He was talking about how, man, he dropped so much game, bro. And they didn't say a word about it. They didn't say a word about it, bro. Like, that's crazy, man. This is why we got to have our own media, so we could really, bring out our own narratives, man. Because if you leave it up to these so-called international media, the traditional media, man, listen, the narrative is going to be so distorted, man. Anyway, let's continue. Niger is establishing an oil and gas school. On Tuesday, the 26th of March, the authorities announced the creation of an oil and gas school by a decree of the Ministry of Higher Education for Research and Technological Innovation. Extractive industries are at the heart of Niger's development strategy, known for its uranium production, but which relies heavily on the marketing of its oil. Now, this is a major breakthrough because Niger, one of the most wealthy nations in terms of mineral resources. You're talking about, endless amounts of possibilities. You're talking about an endless amount of uranium. And they just recently began producing oil in the past year. I mean, not the past year, but in the past decade or so. Right. So when you talk about the potential that Niger has to be a very wealthy and powerful nation, it's really endless. It's actually crazy. Like, it really should be one of the most powerful and wealthy nations on the continent, right next to the Congo and Nigeria and things like that. It really should be, it really should be. But then again, it goes back to what we mentioned earlier. Our people are criminally miseducated. I guarantee in the universities in Niger, in the classrooms in Niger, they talk about Napoleon Bonaparte and all this other nonsense, but they're not teaching about the real deal, the socio-cultural realities of the nation, right? We need to learn how to harness our mineral resources. That's what's most important. That should be the top of the agenda, right? The education should actually fit the reality on the ground. It should fit the reality of the nation. And once the population themselves are armed with the knowledge of how to harness and get the full value out of their mineral resources, then we have no use for these multinational corporations. We have no use, right? So that's something that I respect also, because even though Niger is kicking out the multinational corporations, at this point, now you have to replace them. You have to now indoctrinate and educate your population on how to take the place and harness the value of the mineral resources. That's going to be more jobs, more revenue, more money, more power, more leverage, more everything, bro. More everything, more life. Let's get into it, man. Let's continue. The National School of Petroleum and Gas, the ENPG, an institution affiliated with the University of Zinder, was recently announced by the Nigerian authorities. The Ministry of Higher Education, Research, Technological Innovation announced that the establishment aims to address the specific educational needs of the oil sector, including vocational training, technical and technological education, research and innovation. The mission of the ENPG will be to provide professional bachelor's and master's degree programs, as well as contributing education and retraining the engineers and technicians in the oil sector. The initiative comes as Niger began oil production in 2011 through the exploitation of reserves in the Agadem region. The country has expanded the crude oil exports to international markets since the beginning of 2024, increasing from 20,000 to 110 barrels of oil per day. The efforts are part of a broader strategy aimed at enhancing local skills and expertise in the Nigerian oil industry, with the goal of promoting sustainable development of the country's oil industry and generating economic opportunities for the population. Now, it's a shame that it took some boys from the military to get these things kickstarted and underway, when they should have came from the so-called democratically elected civilian leaders. But it is what it is, man. It is what it is, man. But anyways, I want to congratulate the brothers. The story on Niger, the oil and gas school, that came out a couple months ago. I'm actually late on reporting that, but they listen, this was like an undercover story. They didn't talk about it on CNN. They didn't talk about it on any of the major publications. So it kind of slipped under the radar, right? Now the story on Burkina Faso, that came out in the past few days. That's actually pretty new. So I think that's major. Changing the textbooks to reflect the actual reality on the ground. And I'm telling you, it's different when a young child has a firm grasp on their history and their identity and who their enemies are and who their allies are and what their goals for the future should be. It's very different from a miseducated child that is growing up worshiping the adversary. It's just a different mindset that's going to be produced, man. It's a different mindset. And then now, once you are given the knowledge of how to harness your natural resources, it's a different ball game now. It's a different ball game. You know, obviously we're not going to see the results of this for some time because it's something that happens over time, right? It's not something that's going to be, you're going to wake up next week and see the results. But, just the fact that they put these things in place, man, big shout out to them boys, man. Big shout out to the AES. I think, like I said, these stories are not as sexy, as like other stories, but it's definitely got a lot of substance behind it. It's not as sexy, but it got a lot of substance. Anyways, man, it's your boy Nefakari, that's Salim, back in the building. Yes, indeed. Cash App in the description. Support the album, man. Support the album. Peace.
Feel like I'm 75. Know that your team be full of them traders, that can never be mine. I'm grabbing a thought when I drive. I'm back in my zone and we on. She said that she ready to come be my wife, yeah, hoping I don't do her wrong. I gave her my word and it's bond. I'm whipping the best like a lamb. I'm eating no chicken and lamb. Accustomed to call me the man. I never be up on the gram. I'm keeping that way undercover. She want me to tell her I love her. I told her I'm breaking the rules. I told her we making the news. Back in my city, they loving me. Standing alone, I'm 100 deep. Enemy plotting and still in reach. They try to make sure that we underneath. Trying to make sure that we never make it. Coming for power, come get acquainted. Coming for everything that I wanted. Feeling like Drake, but I really wrote it. Feeling like Kendrick, I'm checking names. Gotta roll up while I go insane. Got so much stress, I been gated away. Stuffing these racks in this Louis case. One thing for certain, I'm about to check. Keep it 100 and nothing less. Stick with the family since day one. Had to stay down till my day come. Had to stay down, but I'm never patient. Hop on the mic and I'm motivated. Hop on the mic and I drop a classic. Haters can't see me, they copping glasses. Back in the studio making magic. Got a new tape and it's in production. Back on my business, I got a budget. Staying low key when I'm out in public. Feel like I'm 75. Know that your team be full of them traders, that can never be mine. I'm grabbing a thought when I drive. I'm back in my zone and we on. She said that she ready to come be my wife, yeah, hoping I don't do her wrong. I gave her my word and it's bond. I'm whipping the best like a lamb. I'm eating no chicken and lamb. Accustomed to call me the man. I never be up on the gram. I'm keeping that way undercover. She want me to tell her I love her. I told her I'm breaking the rules. I told her we making the news. Making it news, making it news, breaking the rules, yeah, know that we making it news.